Connecting dots is critical to the understanding of complex global environmental issues. We know that now, but there was a time when making such connections was rare. Enter the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security Program, an initiative built on the idea of creating connections among groups that don't always interact. As the program celebrates its 20th anniversary, it convened an expert panel to not just look back, but to also look ahead to the next 20 years. Their discussion is the focus of this edition of Rewind.
In the discussion today, we're really hoping to get to a discussion of the issues and the evolution of this field and what it means for us moving forward, looking at the connections and critical connections for development, for humanitarian assistance, and for humanity, the connections between population, health, environment, and security, and what that means for livelihoods.
ECSP, I think for those of you in the audience, you already know this, but it has been a keen issue spotter for many years. Its programs provide timely, exciting content. They bring policy analysts, makers together to figure out what are the challenges ahead and what we should be doing to address them. That is really the hallmark of what they do. Their deep analytic strength, I think, has informed many policymakers in the last 2 decades and will continue to do, I'm sure. And their offerings, I can tell you, have given me new ideas about the issue I care about, climate change, and its relation to women's reproductive health, to environmental security, to the issue of natural resources as a defense to climate change, and population dynamics.
And one of the reasons that we ended up calling the Environmental Change and Security Program, what we did with not calling it environmental security, is we wanted to really make this about the connections between all these issues, not just about the security of the environment, which is implied by that term. So in any case, I thought it might be helpful at the end of my time at the White House, when we were starting to see the State Department, Department of Interior, Defense Department, and many others in government starting to talk about these issues in different ways, same outside of government, a sort of safe space to bring people together to talk about these issues and their relevance to each other. And have those honest conversations.
With this new buzzword of resiliency and trying to program to ensure resilience communities, that we apply the lessons learned from our population health and environment programs in the past. When it comes to working across all sectors of the government, and it comes to areas of the Sahel where we know it's going to take a whole of government response, we look back 20 years at what ECSP was pioneering, and we see that it's ever more relevant today, and that we need the lessons learned and the research and the forum to bring all of the academics and the policymakers and the practitioners together to discuss how we're facing this challenge.
One was, and this was a learning process for me and for everyone who comes to the Wilson Center, is the fact that by being a nonpartisan, non-advocacy forum in a town that is anything but that, or everything but that, that's a real advantage. And we had a lot of folks who we engaged with, particularly early on, were really our innovators in so many respects. And so whether it was PJ kind of having to find an extra computer to run a server so we could actually have a website back in the day, or to now making the argument within the center, it's not a website or a blog or Facebook or Twitter, it's all of it. Right? And so it was that integrated strategy that required those different platforms on the communication also to match this notion that how do you get people working on everything as diverse as population, family planning, development, health, natural resources, and climate, and environment and climate, those are 2 different worlds too, right? We don't want to forget that, as well as security in its various manifestations.
The leaders that we have in this room right now, folks like Bob Engleman, folks like Liz Leahy-Madsen, folks like Rich Sin-Carter, who have really examined the centrality of population dynamics, age structure, reproductive health, women's empowerment to overall development priorities. And we have really progressed. as a field, not just in terms of our analytical lens and thinking of different scenarios.
We seem to be at an unusual juncture. And the truth is that for the kinds of trends and influences and needs that we're talking about, how do you deal with these systemic level influences where it's gender and demographics and resources and military security all coming together? If you have this brittle sort of inflexible and rigid political system that's not adapting and not moving, where does that leave us?
In the mid-2000s, the climate change problem was being portrayed as a problem that you have to solve. And I think, like what I said about Tim Wirth and Tom Daschle's piece, I think there's a constructive shift toward a realization that climate change is with us. It's a century-scale problem. It will not be solved by one administration, under one Secretary General. It is a new relationship with energy and the climate system that we are evolving, and I think that's actually helpful.
One of the most exciting things for me being here, which I didn't fully recognize looking in from the outside before I joined the Wilson Center, was the degree to which this program has informed other programs at the Wilson Center. And we have actually been we have expanded our purview. We're now part of a larger initiative at the center that's called a Global Sustainability and Resilience Program, which brings in 4 other programs, and we're very systematically having this go across the DNA of the Wilson Centers.
For more information, visit wilsoncenter.org. Click the Programs tab to find additional resources from the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security Program.